Hi, I'm Brian Fonseca, Director of the Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy at FIU's Stephen J. Green School of International and Public Affairs. The recent wave of protests sweeping the island of Cuba has raised really important questions about how the Cuban regime will use its security forces to respond to protesters. State security forces in Cuba are tied largely to either the Ministry of the Revolutionary Armed Forces, also known as the FAR, or the Ministry of Interior, referred to often as MINIT. The FAR is designed largely to address external security, while MINIT is primary institution responsible for the regime's domestic and political opposition. The FAR has been the most powerful institution in Cuba. It's often referred to as the vanguard of the revolution by both scholars and Cuban leadership. In fact, today's FAR was born out of the units that fought under Fidel and Raul Castro in the 1950s. Over the last few decades, however, the FAR has struggled with unprecedented uncertainty, especially since the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. Since, the FAR has been severely reduced in both size and capability. But the FAR remains the most trusted institution by both the people and especially the country's leadership. The FAR has proven its loyalty to the revolution time and time again. Its longstanding reputation as a loyal and efficient institution has inspired Cuban leadership to lean on the FAR for most social and political experiments, as well as the implementation of major policy shifts, many outside of the scope of traditional militaries. In times of dire economic struggles, the regime relied on members of the FAR to assume important roles in the economy. In fact, Raul Castro's former son-in-law, General Luis Alberto Rodriguez Lopez Calleja, leads the FAR's massive financial stake in the Cuban economy. He heads the Business Administration Group, also known as GAESA. GAESA is a conglomerate of businesses operated by the military in industries ranging from tourism and construction to financial services and coffee distribution. Whatever the outcome of the recent protests, the FAR will continue to play an important role in maintaining the revolution and ensuring the survival of the Cuban regime, even though it will not be the primary institution confronting protesters. It will still likely play important roles in any reforms resulting from the regime's attempts to assuage social unrest. As I said before, the FAR is used for external security. It's rarely used to address domestic political unrest. Instead, the Cuban government relies on MINIT for internal security. MINIT serves to preserve the FAR's reputation by firewalling the FAR from confronting civilians on the streets of Cuba. It's what lends to the FAR's overall reputation as the trusted institution. The FAR and MINIT are connected in many ways, but remain distinct institutions. Throughout much of the 1960s and 1980s, the FAR and MINIT maintained contentious relations as a result of personality conflict among the institution's respective leadership. In 1989, however, then Minister of Defense Raul Castro purged and restructured MINIT to ensure better alignment between MINIT and the FAR. In fact, FIU's Dr. Frank Moore famously referred to MINIT as the FAR's Fifth Army in his seminal work published in 2006. MINIT comprises several institutions specifically designed to address domestic political uprisings. Some of the institutions include the National Revolutionary Police Force and the Special Brigade, also known as the Black Berets. These institutions are designed to repress political dissent using a variety of tactics, from violently confronting protesters and targeting opposition leaders to infiltrating protests and disrupting planning and coordination of social movements. They also play an important role in counterintelligence, monitoring the political activities of citizens across the country. The FAR and MINIT are the dominant state security institutions, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention at least a third counter-revolutionary focus group in Cuba, which is the Committees for the Defense of the Revolution, also known as the CDR. CDR is a distinct institution from MINIT and the FAR, but works in concert with MINIT to ensure survival of the Cuban regime. The CDR comprises members organized into groups at the neighborhood, municipal, provincial, and national levels. The CDR is sort of akin to a civil society organization that largely has a very loose reporting structure, but responds to the guidance of the Communist Party. CDR is a primary tool used by the government to implement activities at very local levels across the country. Activities range from monitoring opposition and providing intelligence on opposition activities to MINIT, to helping with social programming, such as literacy campaigns and public health efforts. Ultimately, MINIT, more so than the FAR, will lead efforts to control uprisings on the island. It will likely draw, however, from the FAR if protests become too overwhelming. In the long term, the FAR will play a key role in the policies that the Cuban government unveils to address widespread unrest. And the CDR will also maintain an important role in monitoring and discouraging protests in neighborhoods across Cuba.